Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is indeed a privilege for me to be part of this important platform on the global diversity, equity, inclusion benchmark. At a time when organizations are navigating transformation, it is encouraging to see inclusion being positioned not merely as compliance, but as a driver of institutional and economic change. My reflections today are shaped by my recent experience as former interim chairperson of the National Commission on the Status of Women, where we worked at the intersectionality of policy reform, institutional accountability, and gender justice. Pakistan's commitment to inclusion is reinforced by its alignment with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, with 6 goals directly addressing gender equality, decent work, and economic growth, reduced inequalities, quality education, sustainable industrialization, and accountable institutions. Article 27 of Pakistan's Constitution emphasizes equal opportunities without discrimination, while regulatory frameworks issued by Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan and State Bank of Pakistan further emphasizes diversity and inclusion within the organizations for economic growth. In 2024, Prime Minister's Women Empowerment Package, directive to listed companies to disclose gender pay gap report in annual accounts, is an incredible example of measuring gender wage gap in Pakistan, which is in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals and CEDA as adopted by the government of Pakistan. The Prime Minister Directive also focused on strategy for acknowledging private companies, implementing women-friendly policies, and impact of women inclusion in businesses. And as a result, we see 5,220 businesses owned by women have availed financing through STR. 7,573 companies are headed by female CEOs. Another important intervention worth mentioning here is of inclusive and diverse boards. It is indeed an honor again to be part of this platform. Global diversity, equity, inclusion, and benchmark standards. This has shown me that gender equality is not just a right issue. It is an economic and business imperative. Gender, along with the private sector, is the reality in Pakistan and is a new core indicator. Yet, there are critical gaps that remain, where women representations on board is still limited and it's not translating into broader leadership parity. Women are largely absent from the executive decision-making and value chains, and informal women remain outside the corporate visibility and supply chain accountability. In this odd scenario, we must recognize that the private sector is not just a participant, it is a powerful driver of gender equality outcomes. At the National Commission, one key realization is that law creates enabling environments, but market determines access and outcomes. Without private sector alignment, gender equality policies remain aspirations rather than the outcomes. My experience from HomeNet Pakistan, working for the invisible workforce, where we work with the women who are part of the national and global supply chains, yet they are not recognized as workers in the formal economic systems, and they lack social protection, financial inclusion, and recognition. This is where the private sector must step in for responsible sourcing, for inclusive supply chains, ensuring transparency and recognition, fair compensation and social protection, and through financial inclusion strategies, along with skills, digital access to finance, the real economic mobility can be seen. And also collective organization, which brings bargaining power to the woman. Second, from policy to measurable impacts. We need to align the GDEIB indicators, accountability and outcomes, and link DI with the ESG and business performance. And number 3, from workplace to ecosystem, where we need to extend DI beyond employees to suppliers, workers, communities, and beyond. Inclusion must travel across the value chain. And the global evidence, as reflected in the GDEIB, shows that diverse leadership has the ability for better performance. Inclusive workplace leads to higher innovation and retention. And gender inclusion pave way for stronger market reach. To reach this goal, a call for action is required. Business policymakers and civil society must align. Use frameworks like GDEIB for measurement and accountability. Invest in women economic empowerment as a growth strategy and not as CSR. The future for inclusive growth in Pakistan depends on whether we bring the most excluded women into the center of our economic system. Inclusion is not about adding women into the existing system. It is about transforming the system so that women can lead, thrive, and redefine the future of the work. And let me conclude with 3 key shifts that I believe are essential. We need to move from compliance to accountability. Move beyond ticking the boxes, focus on the outcomes, enforcement, and measurable changes. Shift from representations to real power. Ensure women that they are not only present, but they are part of the decision-making, leadership, and resource control. Because equality is not about seats, it's about influence. And the third one important shift that I think is very essential, transfer from workplace to economic systems by extending inclusion beyond employees to supply chains, marginalized groups. Because the true inclusion must reach to the last woman in the value chain. And finally, the path towards collective responsibility is that the government must continue to strengthen enabling frameworks, the private sector must move from commitment to implementation, and civil society must ensure the voices of the excluded are not lost. And let me leave you with this thought, that inclusion is not about adding women into the existing system. And lastly, what gets measured is recognized, and GDEIB gives us that opportunity. I thank you all, and special thanks to Zahid Mubarak Saab for ensuring that I am here. Thank you so much.